All right, what about automobile? I'm a little stunned. I don't know what to think of, to tell you the truth. I keep kind of waxing back and forth on it. Part of me says there's too much going on. There's too many little things. There's calculations that you can make at the end, but early on there's too much to even really have a grasp on. Is that a good or a bad thing? A lot of the actions, it's not clear whether or not you're making a good move, but it's also not clear always whether or not it makes a hell of a lot of difference. Little things like the demand sheets. They're kind of sensible. Each corporation would have some idea of the market. They're doing some research, etc. But not a very good picture overall. And not a lot of strength in what the overall market is going to be like for automobiles. They know the aging factor of cars. They know, income levels, this, that, and the other. But that just gives them one little slice into it. And honestly, that's one of the issues that I have with the whole game, is that it feels as though it's coming it's aiming towards a simulation, not a detailed one on the level of, say, 18XX, which I wouldn't call a simulation either. It's very strongly tied to the subject matter, to the topic, whatever. And for those of you following my theme discussions, it's very thematic because it's got little cars on these and it's got the right people. Right? That's thematic. But anyhow, it captures, I think, the essence of the kinds of decisions you're making for the reasons that you'd make them in a lot of ways. Opening up new plants because your old ones are going obsolete. The old ones going obsolete don't mean I'm not going to sell any cars. It means you're going to have a harder time selling those cars. So you're going to have to push them a little harder. You're going to have to advertise more. Maybe that won't help you. You can cut the price. You've got all these little levers to play with and to change this game to the extent that it all becomes this tangled mass that it's very hard to pull a piece and see what's happening. You could say the same about war games. But this isn't that kind of rich simulation, right? Could you say the same about 18XX? This feels a little more overblown than an 18XX game does. It feels like there are way more little parts. And those way more little parts still almost give you enough control where towards the very end you can calculate out, is this a better move for me or is this a better move for me? Do I need to hurt this person? What can I do? It does feel like you have almost this calculable, I like to use that word, almost this calculable ability to figure out what your optimal move is at the very end. But early on, it's just this massive spaghetti that you can have some broad general ideas about what's going to work and what's not. Now, I like the earlier part. I can see a lot of gamers saying, well, that's too much. Yeah, actually, to me, the middle ground is too much. I don't like where I can calculate or where I feel like I can. Where I feel like I cannot. Where I feel like the only way I'm going to get there to where I want to go is kind of by experiencing the game several times. That's what's gotten me the games that I love, like the 18XX games, like Go. Games that have a lot of room to explore and that I can't just sit down and focus my brain on figuring out the optimal move. This also, though, has the luck factor of these chits, which, again, I say they're kind of overblown because they don't do anything you need, right? You have this limited information, and that is topically correct. You should have this limited information that doesn't tell you a hell of a lot about what the market's really going to be like, but it may give you some added level of confidence, which probably is just bullshit anyway, so that your decisions as to how many cars to produce could be influenced by it, but it's more like an emotional reaction than any rational one. How do I feel about something like that? Adding some little piece like that doesn't really add to the gameplay decision space. You know, you not space, but you're not gaining any additional information to add to your computation that's of any great value. But you may be gaining something that gives you some emotional insight or some emotional feel for how you should go forward. And again, I'm not sure, because part of me says, wow, like everything else in this game, there's all these little pieces, none of which you can really justify on your own. You're playing with this huge Rube Goldberg for the whole game until the end. But you can play kind of on intuition. And I like that second part. I can understand why a lot of gamers would not like what feels like too many pieces, too many little moving parts all working together. Enough moving parts that feel like they probably will keep this obscure. Can it be figured out? Are there some strong, rules that you can sort of discern from this? Maybe. I'm not so sure though, because there are some interesting aspects to where you can get with the strategy. For example, in the game I played, everybody was playing very cautiously, so the cars didn't come out really fast. But I could see someone actually deliberately trying to push more and more models out to make the other players hurt more and more. It's an interesting tactic. Will it work? I don't know. It's the kind of thing that I'd have to play a lot more times to get the feel for. Now, one of the problems with this game is it doesn't tell me this fantastic story of growth in the way that even Brass kind of does, but maybe it's because I had... So one of the things is when I got Brass, I didn't have many games, and I had almost nothing like it lying around. Now, I had a lot of games, they just weren't with me, so I kind of put more effort into it. Maybe if I put that kind of effort into this, I would catch that feeling, that fever, that want to try to optimize and play. It feels like there's a lot of these kind of opportunistic decisions that I like in this. A lot of places where you have these little choices to make. You don't have to think too hard on them, but they come out well. For me, that's a gameplay advantage. For some people, I think it may feel like it all comes down too much to, hey, what's this going to come out? What's the sales going to come out? The last term of the game that I played here, it felt like, geez, I shouldn't have been so careful. I shouldn't have tried to discount prices. I could have made more sales than I did had I produced more cars, or I could have made more profit on my sales had I not discounted, or whatever. I took effort, I expended effort on things that didn't need to be expended on. I found that at some points, but at other points I found these chits or my perception betrayed me and ended up with some extra production that ends up producing penalties. I like that whole balance in some sort of ephemeral sort of way where I can't quite grasp what it is I like about it, but something about it leads me to say I think this would be a game that if I was how I was when I first discovered, say, 18XX, it might be as impressive to me. What's missing from it that's in XX? In 18XX, you have that, I'm just going to destroy you. I'm going to dump a company on you, or I'm going to wreck your stock so bad that you're basically out of the game. There's no real direct actions you can do here like that. Although you can push the cars out and you can hurt someone, you can't wreck them. You can't destroy them. You can't force the game to end early. You can't do anything like that. So that takes some options away, but that's okay, I think. As a simulation, again, or as a representation, if you wish, I think this does very, very well. The things you're choosing are the things that you would choose when running a car company. The knowledge that you have is the knowledge approximately that you would have. Hey, my competitor's got these factories he's opening up. Let me be careful with how many I produce. I've got to make sure that I have the ability to do advertising because of this. Maybe I should close this plant. It's not going to be making that much money. I'm producing these silly little black kits. All that kind of stuff seems really, really proper. However, in terms of the narrative that it produces, without that map, without the physical map of what's going on, the fact that I'm just, moving cubes around or little counters or whatever on this production board, that I don't have my own production board like I would in business management, wherever I've got that hiding now. That this is just a representation of the entire economy in some really sort of abstracted sort of way. That takes away from my ability to imagine what's going on. At least for now. Maybe after I've played it a few more times, this is going to really hook me. So I actually see this as a pretty strong, potentially very strong game. I'm just not sure how well it'll hold up. But at this point, it really grasps me in this kind of, wow, I think it's at my level of gameplay, which is until you hit the very end. Of course, you do have moments like that in 18XX, and I may get used to coping with them in this with enough playings. So, until you hit that very end, you really just kind of make this broad strategy, which may be affected by your opportunistic choices. Every now and then you might switch your path and say, yeah, I'm going to tool up and build some new vehicle plants because I want to obsolete other people's stuff. Things aren't working well for me. I got to shake it up a little bit. That kind of feeling. However, it may not have that. And that's my worry. I suspect it actually does hold up quite well. I suspect that this will, with all its little levers and everything, not end up coming to one or two core strategies that will, that can be compared and rock beats scissors or whatever when it comes down to it. I think that there may be some key things like you want to make lots of money early on, or you don't want to leave yourself with lots of production behind at the end of the thing, or stuff like that. Some essentially platitudes or that you can state about the game, but they're probably not always true. I don't think it's a game, though, either where you just want to some extent it is, where you just want to go in the direction that everybody else isn't. I don't think it's that simple either. As to the components, they really are very pretty. The sturdy, heavy counters, very beautiful colors. I love this blue. And the red is very nice, too, to me. The board, functional. It doesn't tell the story to me the way I want it to, but it does hit on, I think, the appropriate level of kind of simulation, topic, subject matter, all that kind of stuff. Only gripe I have with these components is the damn paper money. And I know most people probably don't use it who play these kind of games. But it's very, very thin. It was blowing away without me even noticing it. It's that light. Too slick. I can't get a good grasp on it. It actually, you can pull single bills off. They don't stick together. But it just is flimsy and unpleasant to me in ways that I don't like. I want something more like the old Mayfair money, which I thought was quite good. But this is like textbook paper, which I know must be very, very cheap to produce. It's that slick, sturdy, but flimsy feeling component that one of the few games where I've really considered going and grabbing different money for. But everything else holds up pretty well. Even my paperwork. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk about this. I like the subject matter a lot. There's so many train games out there, and I think this captures that subject matter in a way that maybe gives it a little bit more detail than something like business management or executive decision, which could kind of be abstractly said to be producing any old thing. It could be about automobiles. And I kind of like that those things don't specify, I'm about this. This one, with its characters, with their special abilities, it presents you with so many different little decisions. None of which are terribly important, but I think they're all vaguely interesting. It could be overwhelming how many decisions it presents you with. You've got to just kind of say, at least if you're me and you have my little brain, I'm just going to go with the flow. And once you make that decision, it's okay. If you try to tackle it, if you think that you can calculate this sucker out, no, I don't think it's okay anymore. I think you're going to be hurt. I think you're going to be hurting bad because it is such a tangled mess, especially early on. Broad decisions like I'm going to run out some cars and see what happens, those are going to be fun to do. Trying to optimize precisely, you don't know what that market's going to be. You can't do it. There's some factor of uncertainty in this game at all points. You can't be sure whether or not, your your opponents are going to place their pieces where you think they are either. But that's pretty standard. But as long as the market is unknown, and it is unknown until you actually start selling off cars, basically, you've got some big question mark hanging over the whole thing. And that helps make it unclear what is your optimal move. You can figure out probabilities because you do, but they actually get complicated because you have that high-low thing with the with the demand. So, the figuring the probabilities out, it isn't a terribly difficult thing, but it is a little bit more difficult than just if each person had one demand chip or one for each type of car. Then you could kind of say, it's going to average out about here. But you got to kind of guesstimate what that high-low chit selection effect is going to have on there. And again, it's not worth the effort to calculate it, I don't think. I think a good feel for probability can allow you to kind of make a guesstimate. And then as you get more familiar with the game, you'll get more used to where those land anyhow. All right, I enjoyed it. I'm actually would be interested in playing it a few more times. I kind of wish I wasn't doing these videos because I probably would pull it out and do it.